So testosterone is a hormone. I know it's primarily, it's the primary male hormone, and that's about the extent of my knowledge.
Yeah, it's the body's natural androgen. Androgen literally means the male sex hormone. So it's a substance capable of developing, maintaining masculine characteristics in reproductive tissues. So that's the genital tract, secondary sexual characteristics, as well as fertility. So again, that's just kind of the basic definition of it.
And that just means it affects like everything, right? I mean, not everything, but nearly everything in the body.
Correct.
It has huge implications.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, and again, there's a lot of different levels we can, or different issues we can go into. And in terms of in the body, there are 3 major surges of it.
Okay.
The third surge is a little interesting. It kind of stays. We'll get into some nuance of that, but there's a surge during the first trimester of fetal development. Right. That's just nuts and bolts, literally male genital tract differentiation. There's also a second surge, which this was interesting to me, in the early life of a newborn. It's almost like a mini puberty. So it occurs in the hours following birth, peaks around 1 to 3 months, drops back down around 6 months. This is less explicitly understood, but what I found was interesting is that it's believed to involve the formation of the sexually dimorphic characteristics. That is a fancy way of saying the difference between the sexes. Yeah. So, and I know this can get complicated, but we're speaking on average and we're speaking typically, why are young boys maybe typically a little more aggressive than young girls? Right. Why do young boys want to have a girlfriend in first grade, those kind of things? And it's because they believe that during these first few months, that is where, outside of testosterone mediated effects throughout the body, that on the brain and just the thought processes, that's where some of that is differentiated.
I actually know a little bit about this. I get to be an expert for half a second here. During the what is it, like the 16th week of fetal development, when that happens, something like that, there is a bath of testosterone on the male brain, and it causes the hemispheres, particularly the right hemisphere, to shrink slightly, and it breaks a bunch of the corpus callosum between the 2 hemispheres. And that's the connections that allow the 2 hemispheres to talk to each other. And that is why women have women's intuition and men don't. It's because both hemispheres of their brain are able to communicate back and forth much more rapidly, but we can't. We have to take it a piece at a time and think process wise all the way through it. It's fun.
That is interesting. And there's obviously a lot of nature versus nurture going on there, a lot of nuance there. But again, we're just talking like the most baseline level. I found that interesting.
It also means that all men are brain damaged. So we're born brain damaged. Just
we have an excuse.
Fun fact. All right. So anyway,
that third one begins in puberty. Pretty obvious, but and if you're looking at a graph of it, it's like the little spike during the first trimester, back down. It'll spike during the first month to 3 months, back down around 6 months. And then the third one isn't so much a spike. It's a spike in terms of it going up. Right. But it goes back down very gradually over decades. So when you're looking at it, the line based on time, it's got that third one has a very unique look to it. That's obviously the one we're going to focus on. That's the one that gets very nuanced and has, multifactorial, effects on our life. Also different things in our body that, can affect it. Right.
Okay. That makes sense. So at puberty primarily is when the big one happens that has the biggest impact on what we're talking about. Obviously the obvious physiological changes and all that stuff. What happens over time? You said it tapers over time every decade?
Yeah, as we age, our testosterone goes down in the most just basic form. It happens at different levels. Some people, pinpoint this age or that age, but a lot of the charts I've seen, it's a pretty steady decline. I don't know if you've had any more nuance to that, but yeah, in the most simplest form.
Right. Like Joey's saying, in general, it does taper off, but that's where, I think eventually we can get into some of the, the pathology of testosterone declining for one reason or another. But the issue there is that there's just this pervasive thought in popular culture that, testosterone's just going down across the male population. It's responsible for so many of our issues. And all we got to do is be a little more open to supplementing with it. And so I think, in essence, with this conversation, we want to shed a little more light and nuance to that idea.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not to steer us too far from the physiology.
No, it's a huge topic, obviously, but I think it's, in a way, it's like a microcosm of everything nowadays. There's one article about this. My mood is bad. Testosterone helped it. I'm overweight. It's because my estrogen's high because my testosterone's low. I'm stressed out. My sex drive is low. My libido's low. And everything we all want this one answer. If I take testosterone, it's going to fix all these things.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what we'll try to get into here. Not solve it, but just as maybe an individual out there is trying to make a decision for how they proceed. I assume we're talking to the, not so much the bodybuilder crowd, but maybe like the 40s, 50s. They're trying to make a decision there. And hopefully we can shed some light on maybe that process.
And just to address that real quickly, testosterone is the primary, not supplement, but the steroids. That's what that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when people are taking an anabolic steroid,
it's testosterone or some derivative of what we're physiologically making.
And we're not talking about that.
We're
not really. We're not talking about steroid, but bodybuilding.
Right. We're not talking about supra-physiologic doses of TRT.
Radically higher than the body naturally makes.
Juicing.
I mean, certainly people who end up taking TRT for, a medical reason, sometimes, based upon the form or their specific reaction to the drug, they might end up with supra-physiologic levels of serum testosterone, but doesn't always happen. And there's ways to work around that.
Got it. Okay. All right. So as we age, our testosterone declines. You said roughly every decade it goes down a certain amount. And that's normal. That's the way God designed us. That's how things are more or less supposed to happen. But what happens when that's occurring? What are the typical signs of someone's testosterone being in decline?
Yeah, I mean, depressed mood can be one of them. There's a lot of nuance to that. There's some, brain fog, fatigue, and then certainly loss of muscle mass, just general energy levels. There can be increased, fat, BMI, sexual symptoms, sex drive. Again, that's another very nuanced one. But when you're looking at the picture, the more of these you can kind of combine. Those are major things for sure.
Absolutely.
Especially if they're in combination,
Yeah. The problem with a lot of those is, they're often non-specific symptoms.
Absolutely.
Granted, loss of libido, erectile dysfunction, those sorts of sexual issues, they matched with a low serum testosterone can certainly lead you in the direction of a, situation of hypogonadism. But in general, a lot of these are, non-specific, and that's what makes it often challenging to diagnose.
So